In the year 597, Pope Gregory the Great sent Augustine of Canterbury to England, specifically to Canterbury, to be the first bishop there. And he was the first Archbishop of Canterbury, sent by the Pope in 597. And ever since then, a man has sat on that episcopal throne for 1,500 years until today, when the King of England just approved a woman to be the next Archbishop of Canterbury. That's what we're talking about next, coming up here on the Michael Lofton Show. So the Vatican, the Catholic bishops of England and Wales, and several others are praising the new Archbishop of Canterbury, a female. Not the reaction we expected coming from Rome and coming from the Catholic bishops of England, but one that we are seeing nonetheless. We're going to take a look at it, as well as find out who this new Archbishop is going to be and what her positions are on some very important issues. Let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to share my screen and let's watch a video of her. She was the Bishop of London, Anglican Bishop of London. Now she's going to be the Anglican Bishop of Canterbury. Her name is Bishop Sarah Mullally. Let's see what she has to say. Please let me know if there are any difficulties in hearing the audio in the chat. Let's go ahead and begin.
Hello, my name is Bishop Sarah Mullally. I'm deeply honoured to have been called to serve as the 106th Archbishop of Canterbury. I take up this calling with trust not in myself alone, but in God who guides us all. May we be bold in hope, generous in spirit, and steadfast in love as we serve Christ and one another.
So I saw this news break this morning, and I thought, this is really interesting. I wonder what Rome is going to say in response. I didn't have to wonder for long, because I immediately pulled up Vatican News and I got my answer. The Vatican representative of the Pope, Cardinal Koch, for the dicastery for promoting Christian unity. He's the one responsible for communicating with Anglicans, Eastern Orthodox, and all sorts of others. Cardinal Koch congratulates Archbishop Designate of Canterbury and congratulates her for her, quote, ministry on behalf of the Catholic Church. And it's, again, not just him. The Catholic bishops of England and Wales have also congratulated her. Now, again, keep in mind, in the Catholic Church, women cannot be ordained to the priesthood, let alone the episcopate, a bishop. And most Anglican ordinations in the Catholic Church since Pope Leo XIII have been considered invalid. So it's interesting that the cardinal is congratulating her on her ministry, because there's a problem with how does this line up with the Catholic position on Anglican ordinations and the ordination of women. So there's a double problem here. King Charles III has approved the nomination of Right Reverend and Right Honorable Dame Sarah Mullally, Bishop of London, as the 106th Archbishop of Canterbury. She will be the first woman to hold the office, with her installation scheduled March 2026 at Canterbury Cathedral. You remember, this see has been vacant because the previous archbishop resigned. And so it's gone for quite some time without a successor until today. In a letter addressed to Bishop Mullally, Cardinal Koch, president of the Dicastery for Promoting Christian Unity, offered his congratulations and expressed the Catholic Church's support for her new ministry. So he's speaking on behalf of not just the Pope and not just the Vatican, but all Catholics. So if you're a Catholic watching this, speaking on your behalf, congratulating her on her ministry. Having learned, he says, of your nomination, I write to congratulate you on your appointment and to express the good wishes of not just myself, but the Catholic Church to you as you prepare to undertake this important service in your church. I pray that the Lord will bless you with the gifts you need for the very demanding ministry. That's an interesting term, again, in light of the fact that the church teaches that not only are male Anglican ordinations invalid ever since Pope Leo XIII, the one who holds this name prior to Pope Leo XIV, the current Pope. Leo XIII said Anglican ordinations are null. And so unless there's some kind of exception where they have old Catholic orders in their ordinations, null and void. But not only that, but also the Catholic Church teaches from especially John Paul II in Ordinatio Sacerdotalis that it's a definitive teaching that women cannot be ordained to the priesthood and therefore to the episcopate. So it's interesting he's using the term ministry. Ministry to which you have now been called, equipping you to be an instrument of communion and unity for the faithful among whom you will serve, the Cardinal writes. He highlighted the long-standing theological dialogue between the Anglican Communion and the Catholic Church, noting that it has fostered mutual understanding and affection for nearly 60 years. And it's going to be interesting to see how Pope Leo interacts with her in these ecumenical affairs and dialogues and discussions. We recall Pope Francis had that very controversial moment where he asked the Anglican Archbishop to bless him. Something that scandalized a lot of people because they thought, wait, this guy isn't even a valid priest. How can he bless the Pope? It will be interesting to see how Pope Leo interacts with her, especially in light of the fact that we've been seeing many Catholic bishops saying that the teaching of women's ordination is actually not infallible. It's an open question in the church. And there are bishops in the Catholic Church, as I've shown here in the last few months, openly celebrating with Anglican priests, celebrating Mass in Catholic churches with Anglican priests. It'll be interesting to see how Pope Leo reacts to it all. He recalled the warmth of relationships between the two communions, particularly after the death of Pope Francis earlier this year, and expressed hope that this closeness would continue. He says, it's my fervent hope that such closeness may continue in the years ahead as we continue to walk together on the way, with the assurance of my prayers for you and your family. And family here includes her husband. She is married. Okay. And there's the Cardinal who just sent her the congratulations. But not just him. Cardinal Nichols over in England, on behalf of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of England and Wales, speaking on behalf of all of these Catholic bishops and cardinals, I welcome the news of the appointment of Bishop Sarah Mullally as the next Archbishop of Canterbury. She will bring many personal gifts and experience to her new role. So not only are we seeing now very, very positive reactions from these cardinals, from the Vatican, from these bishops, here's another one from Rome. The Vatican's Pontifical Academy for Life, the communications director for this Pontifical Academy at the Vatican, has just said about her, this is a great decision, he says. Great decision, very important, a positive, inclusive sign for Europe, for the whole world, and for religions. Now, to be upfront, she is pro-abortion and pro-LGBTQ. And it's a little odd to see the Vatican's pro-life communications director congratulating a pro-abortion election. Now, let that sink in light of what we just saw with the controversy, where Pope Leo says, if you hold to the death penalty, you're not pro-life. But then his own representative, who is pro-life Academy communications director, is praising a pro-abortionist. What does it even mean to be pro-life anymore, according to Rome at this point? I think that's a fair question that people are going to start asking when they see this. Is Pope Leo going to say anything about this? His representatives, Cardinal Koch, the communications director here, his representatives over in England and Wales and the Cardinals there. Is he going to come out and say, hey, guys, actually, no, y'all got this one wrong? Or is he, going to go with it? I guess we'll find out soon. Not just reactions from Catholic bishops that we're seeing. Now we have an Oriental Orthodox Coptic Archbishop, the Orthodox Archbishop of London, congratulates her, says, praying for Bishop Sarah M. on her announcement as Archbishop of Canterbury designate, as well as for the Church of England and the Anglican Communion over this coming period of transition, as she transitions into becoming the next Archbishop of Canterbury. So we're seeing positive reactions from the Coptic Orthodox community. I have yet to see what the Patriarch of Constantinople for the Eastern Orthodox will say, and some of the other patriarchs in Eastern Orthodoxy. I suspect, just my hunch, is that Patriarch Bartholomew will be favorable to this. That's just based on his track record. But we'll see. I haven't seen a statement yet. We'll find out soon, though. Mullally is a former nurse, now going to be Archbishop of Canterbury, has been serving as Bishop of London, and she is known as a theological liberal. Again, pro-women's ordination, obviously, right? Pro-abortion, pro-LGBTQ, all of that, you name it. And so she says, I would suspect that I would describe my approach to this issue as pro-choice rather than pro-life. Although if I were a continuum, I would be somewhere along it, moving towards pro-life when it relates to my choice, and then enabling choice when it relates to others. So if she has a baby, she's going to keep it. But with others, she has no problem with them terminating the pregnancy. So she's pro-abortion. Here's a brief message from her. Let's take a look and see what she says. Please let me know if there's any difficulty in hearing the audio.
Washing feet has shaped my Christian vocation. As a nurse, then a priest, then a bishop. In the apparent chaos which surrounds us, in the midst of such profound global uncertainty, the possibility of healing lies in acts of kindness and love. With humility and grace, we uphold and support those in need of our help. We do this to the best of our ability, in small ways and bigs, according to our own very particular gifts. That too is the service which I offer the Church today.
Wow. Gives you a little bit of a feel for her. That was just posted on Twitter today. I want to point you again to Pope Leo XIII in 1896, who declared the nullity of Anglican orders. So unless there is some kind of mixing with the ordination lines, perhaps with Old Catholics or Eastern Orthodox, inserting validity of orders into the ordination of an Anglican prelate, then an Anglican ordination is declared to be invalid according to the Catholic Church since 1896. And this is for males. For women, the Catholic Church teaches in Ordinatio Sacerdotalis that women cannot be ordained to the priesthood and therefore to the episcopate. And John Paul II says that this is a teaching that is to be held definitively by the Church's faithful. I declare that the Church has no authority whatsoever to confer priestly ordination on women, and that this judgment is to be definitively held by all the Church's faithful. Now, you'll notice he doesn't put it in the category of dogma. He puts it in that second tier category of definitive Catholic doctrine, second paragraph teachings of the profession of faith, as opposed to first paragraph. teachings, which are dogmatic. Now, if you don't know the distinction, you're going to want to check out my courses on the magisterium. I go over this in a great deal of detail. rtcourses.com. You'll need to go through that to kind of get some foundational knowledge, but the church teaches in the profession of faith, categories of doctrines. There's divinely revealed dogmas, first category. Then things that are not divinely revealed, but are related to something divinely revealed, but that can be taught definitively. That's second category. And then there's third category, non-definitive, non-infallible teachings that are authoritative and that you have to give submission of intellect and will to, but they're not definitive. Well, this teaching, he says, is to be held definitively. That's the language of that second tier, not dogmas, but that second downgraded tier of definitive Catholic doctrine. He didn't put it as dogma. I don't know why. Somebody asked me, why didn't he upgrade it to a primary object? I don't know. He put it as a secondary object. It is what it is. I don't know his motives. But because he did that, I'm going to show you a challenge here in just a second. So push pause on that one. But here I'm showing you the church is saying this has to be held definitively by everyone, that women can't be ordained. And also, Anglican ordinations are invalid. But we're seeing the Vatican congratulating her on her ministry. Not only that, but we've seen coming out of the Vatican high-ranking cardinals. Cardinal Holeric, right here, over the Synod of Bishops. Cardinal Holeric, this was just from May of 2024, just last year. He says the church's teaching on women's ordination is not infallible. He says, quote, it means that it is not an infallible doctrinal decision. It can be changed, he says. The question of women's ordination in the Catholic Church. High-ranking cardinal at the Vatican says it can be changed. He says it needs arguments and time. Pope Francis to Cardinal Burke, in a dubia response to Cardinal Burke, had this to say. And I pointed this out to y'all at the time and showed y'all that this is open to misinterpretation. Watch this. On the question of women's ordination, Pope Francis said to Cardinal Burke, on the other hand, to be rigorous, let us recognize that a clear and authoritative doctrine on the exact nature of a definitive statement has not yet been fully developed. It is not a dogmatic definition, and yet it must be adhered to by all. No one can publicly contradict it, except cardinals do all the time, and yet it can be a subject of study, as with the case of validity of ordinations in the Anglican Communion. And I said, y'all, the way that's phrased makes me a little concerned, because that is just open to a lot of misinterpretation. Because this is fancy theological language for Pope Francis to say the teaching on women's ordination, it's not dogma, it's not that first tier, it's not that first category of the profession of faith, it's the second tier, because he rightly observes John Paul II put it in the second category. He is accurate about saying it's in that second category and therefore not dogmatic, but definitive Catholic doctrine. And he does say it's definitive. He says it's a definitive statement, but he says we haven't yet fully developed what it means to be a definitive doctrine in that second tier category. And it can be further studied, just like ordination of Anglicans can be further studied. That is open to liberal theologians coming along and saying, you know what? That second category of definitive teaching, since it's not dogma, it's therefore not necessarily infallible. And we're going to massage this and nuance it to mean definitive doesn't necessarily mean infallible. And voila, we can now develop the doctrine to mean women's ordination is now on the table. Anglican ordinations are on the table. Contraception's on the table, they would argue. Homosexual acts are on the table, they would argue. None of these are my position. I'm telling you what they would argue. And so on. And it's enough of a crack in the dam for them to sneak through a whole truckload of developments. And this is all the more reason why Pope Leo needs to come out and very clearly shut the door on that one. There's a gap here. There's a crack. Let's go ahead and close that crack. With all due respect to Pope Leo, I think he needs to come out and do that. Because if he doesn't, what's going to happen is They're going to see that crack. They're already looking at that crack. That's why you currently have cardinals saying it's not infallible. That's why you have cardinals celebrating Mass in Catholic churches with women priests, because they see that crack. They see enough wiggle room to slide this through. That maybe is why Pope Leo also just said that the church teaching on homosexuality can change. He says it's not going to change. It's certainly not anytime soon, he said, but he says it can change if attitudes change. Why? He might think it's in this second tier category and there's enough wiggle room to move it through that second tier. And this is where the Pope needs to come out and say, no, you know what? Let's go ahead and close the door on this one fully. And let's take it a step further than John Paul II did. Let's go ahead and make it a dogma. Let's close the door on that one ex cathedra. And let's close the door on all these other ones ex cathedra and make them dogmatic. So there's no more little wiggle room. But right now what they're doing is they're seeing a little bit of wiggle room, and they are maximizing that wiggle room and trying to see how much can we really get through here. And it might not be right away. It might take years, maybe even decades, but we're seeing an inching closer to it slowly and surely. And all the material, all the building blocks are there for it. This is why right now Pope Leo needs to go ahead and shut the door on it before it's too late. But again, that is why I did that video just 1 month ago. Catholic bishops, 6 bishops in Italy concelebrating with a woman priestess right here at the Holy House of Loreto, at a famous Catholic basilica, openly celebrating with a woman. Nothing, not even a slap on the wrist, not a word from Pope Leo. We have other cases like this one. Catholic bishop just celebrated with this woman priest. I just did a whole video on it. Whatever happened with that? Bishops and priests are openly celebrating with women priests in Catholic churches. Publicly, everyone knows about it and sees it, and nothing's happening. And the Pope's not saying anything. What's going on? And now his representatives are congratulating this stuff. Well, it's time for Pope Leo, with all due respect, to come out and do something about this. Now, y'all know I will go to bat for the Pope when there's fake news about him and he's being lied about and slandered. I did that many times with Pope Francis. I also constructively criticized Pope Francis when it was needed. I did both. It's a both and. And I'll also go to bat for Pope Leo if there's fake news about him. I have no problem saying, hey, y'all, this just isn't right. I have actually shown some fake news about Pope Leo, and I was one of the few corrected it even just a few weeks ago. I have no problem going to bat for him, just like Pope Francis. Anybody who's a victim of fake news, I'll go to bat for them. But when there's legitimate grounds for constructive criticism, the magisterium says not only can you do that, it says you have to do it. The Code of Canon Law says that. The Magisterium in Donum Veritatis says that. Popes have asked for that constructive criticism. This is where voices that have tended to be pretty critical of the Pope, this is where those voices probably need to speak up and do so in a constructive and respectful way. Not malicious, not destructive, not disrespectful, and certainly not with false accusations, but just based on the truth, with a positive amount of respect owed to the honor and dignity that the Pope has. This is where those voices need to come out and say respectfully, you know, that this isn't right, and this needs to be addressed because this is becoming a massive problem. So this is actually when we need to start seeing some of those voices in a constructive way. I hope to see that. I think Pope Leo would appreciate that feedback. From what I can tell from him, he seems like a person who's open to constructive criticism. And I think he's the kind who would appreciate that. So I think voices maybe need to speak up and start saying these things, because we're seeing some cause for very serious concern in some of these matters. Now, again, a lot of this conversation surrounds very difficult, concepts, and it really requires a great deal of familiarity with the magisterium. And I have tried to explain many of these things in a number of videos, but it requires a strong foundation. So what I've made available to y'all, again, are my courses on the magisterium that I teach at a Catholic university. An introduction to the magisterium, it gives you a framework for understanding what a primary object, a secondary object, non-definitive Catholic doctrine is, the profession of faith, all these things that I'm talking about here. It gives you the framework to understand the conversation. And it also shows you, here's how the liberals are going to try to exploit that framework to sneak through women's ordination into the church. Here's how they might try to do that. And here's why Pope Leo needs to shut the door on that now, because this is a potential crack in the dam. I go over the history of the magisterium and also how to interpret magisterial documents in 3 courses, 30 lectures. And right now you can get, I'll go ahead and give you again the next week, 25% off. You can see the scrolling marquee at the bottom, 25% off all of my courses, including the already discounted price on these 3 courses. So the magisterium bundle, magisterial studies program, if you go to rtcourses.com, you'll get another 25% off the already discounted price. Just put in 25OFF, 25 off at the time of discount for the coupon code. You'll get another 25% off. That's good for a whole week. Give y'all an opportunity to do that. Take advantage of it. Go through all of those lectures. It's the only magisterial studies program in the world. Courses unique, only of ones of their kind, sadly. Most people don't have this foundational knowledge to see what's going on and how to understand and interpret the magisterium. So I've made that available. And these are the same lectures I teach at a Catholic university. So please go and check them out, rtcourses.com. Take advantage of that discount now. And I would also appreciate if you hit the subscribe button. If you found this commentary to be helpful, enlightening, and also if you find this channel to offer a source of commentary that you don't tend to find elsewhere, please let me know by hitting that subscribe button, hit the like button, and of course, drop a comment in the comment section. I'm happy to hear from you, whether you agree or disagree with some of my evaluation of these things. If you want to see Pope Leo shut the door on some of these conversations, or if you want him to open it further, I would like to hear from you either way. Just put your thoughts there in the comment section. These are my thoughts on this for now. I'll continue to monitor this situation and many, many others. But again, hit the sub button and hit the bell for notification so you know when I go live. So if there's any further developments to this, I'll touch base with all of you and you know when I go live. Because I suspect there's going to be more from the Vatican. Maybe even direct statements from Pope Leo. There's going to be others who come out in the Catholic Church and also the Eastern Orthodox community and comment on this. And I'm going to keep an eye on those and I'm going to cover those with y'all as well. So hit that sub button, hit the bell for notification. All right, see you soon for another one.